Chapter 8:13. Jingyun Zhao jumped in fright when she heard the sound outside the window. She immediately pushed Li Xiaoyun to the side and turned to look out the window. She was blinded by the light, but she could still vaguely see the light blue uniform. She was instantly speechless and lowered her head to cover her face. She had never done such an embarrassing thing in her 2 lifetimes. Was that her? That person was definitely not her. Li Xiaoyun's face was dark as he glanced at the patrolman outside. He looked like he wanted to kill someone, but the patrolman didn't care. He continued to stare fiercely at the window. "Get out. I've already memorized the license plate number. If you don't get out, the punishment will be more severe." Jingyun Zhao's mouth twitched as he prepared to open the door. Li Xiaoyun rubbed his temples and exhaled. "Be good and sit down." With that said, he got out of the car. He had never run away from a fight in his life. He also wanted to see what the patrolman who ruined his plans looked like. The patrolman was shocked when he saw Li Xiaoyun. There were many handsome men these days, but he had never seen one who looked so fierce and cold. However, it was useless to be fierce. He wasn't that easily frightened. "Take out your ID card. Also, the one inside, take it out too." Li Xiaoyun stared at the hothead and gritted his teeth. Although he could have just driven away, he was still a soldier and had always been very self-disciplined. No matter what kind of work it was, he had never neglected to cooperate. However, it was better to change this habit next time. Li Xiaoyun handed over his ID card. The patrolman said, "That woman, come out and let me see." At this time, Li Xiaoyun had already locked the door. Jingyun Zhao couldn't open it at all. He could only stay there obediently and bury his head deep. His face was red, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Fine, right? Keep the money. I know how to apply the fingerprint." "That's enough," Li Xiaoyun said coldly. "No. We have to follow the rules. Let her get out of the car and let me see. Are you a kidnapper?" As he spoke, the patrolman's face was full of vigilance. He quickly picked up his pager and prepared to call for help. Li Xiaoyun's mouth twitched, and he was so angry that his veins were bulging. With a casual flick of his hand, he threw the pager under the bridge. You dare to attack a police officer." He immediately touched his baton and pointed it at Li Xiaoyun. "Quickly release the girl inside. Otherwise, the consequences will be very serious." Li Xiaoyun's eyelids twitched. He exhaled and chose to take out his phone to make a call. The patrolman was stunned, but his baton was still pointed at Li Xiaoyun. "Third brother, contact the patrol team and get this idiot patrolman on Fuking Long Bridge to disappear from my sight immediately." Li Xiaoyun directly instructed the other side of the phone. "Big brother, what's wrong? Is someone blocking your way? Aren't your driving skills very good? You should be able to shake him off, right?" Old Third was puzzled. "Cut the crap, hurry up," Li Xiaoyun said in a strange tone. Suddenly, the person on the other end of the phone became serious. "Okay, wait for me. I'll contact them, but it should take some time to instruct them one by one." As the strategist of the brothers, Third brother felt bitter in his heart. Contact the criminal police force? It was true that he had a wide network of connections, but he really didn't know many small fries, so he could only pressure them from above. Li Xiaoyun also wanted to drive away directly, but he couldn't afford to lose face. Moreover, if he left directly, it would be troublesome if the patrolman called a group of people to block him. Chapter 8:14. At this time, after Li Xiaoyun made a phone call, not long after, a few other patrolmen rushed over and dragged the hothead away. However, the hothead still had a face full of unwillingness, as if Li Xiaoyun was a villain who had abducted a virgin. Stubborn. Li Xiaoyun gritted his teeth before getting into the car. His aura was frightening, and the air seemed to have turned cold. Only then did he drive away safely. However, in less than 2 minutes, Old Third finally found the hothead to ask about the situation. The patrolman was still in a daze. He only knew that the person on the phone was his superior, but he didn't know the identity of the other party. He said righteously, "Officer, that man is a kidnapper. How can you let him go? He actually had car sex in a public place on the bridge in front of so many people." That girl is in danger. Old Third spat out a mouthful of water when he heard that. No wonder Boss had such a bad temper. It was because, but this progress was a little too fast. Sister-in-law wasn't that kind of person. At this moment, Li Xiaoyun rubbed his head. His expression was so cold that it could freeze a person to death. Jing Yunjiao also felt a little embarrassed, but other than that, she was gloating. Li Xiaoyun's angry look just now was really funny. That patrolman is quite innocent, Jing Yunjiao said lightly. Yes, very innocent. These words were forced out of Li Xiaoyun's mouth. I think his superiors will think that he caused trouble for your people for no reason. I'm afraid he won't be able to keep his job, but he is quite responsible. Jing Yunjiao said deliberately. Jiao, don't speak for him. I'm afraid I can't help but want to go back and strangle him. Li Xiaoyun's face was green and red. Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but laugh. Just now, I thought about it. Since I can't make myself stay away from you, then I'll choose to accept it. Li Xiaoyun, I admit that I have feelings for you. I'm also thankful for you accompanying and helping me these past 2 years. However, my personality is eccentric and weird. If you can continue to tolerate it, we can try. Jing Yunjiao finished speaking and there was silence beside her. Just when she thought that Li Xiaoyun had not heard her, she turned her head and saw that his furrowed brows had melted. Suddenly, he slammed on the brakes. You have feelings for me, right? Li Xiaoyun's tone was a little absent-minded. Jing Yunjiao was a little embarrassed, but after thinking about it, he nodded. This thought came to her when he got out of the car and negotiated with the patrol officer. She used to think that this man was high and mighty, so she was tempted but restrained herself. But at that moment, she felt that he was different, and she couldn't help but think of the scene when they met before. It was the same every time. As long as he was with her, he would be extremely patient. The way he looked at her was completely different from how he looked at others. It was just that she had not noticed it in the past or had subconsciously ignored it. If she was destined to find someone to love and have children with, she was afraid that she would not be able to accept other men besides Li Xiaoyun getting close to her. Jiao, should we make up for my mind is full of Mr. Patrol Officer's face, and I think it's better to take it slow. Jing Yunjiao said again. Because of Qiao Weiman, she was a little resistant to men getting close to her. The situation between her and Li Xiaoyun was an exception. Patrol officer again. Li Xiaoyun raised the corner of his mouth. That little patrol officer has some temper, but if he keeps working, I'm afraid that in less than 3 years, his personality will be gone. In that case, Jiao, do you think I should give him a chance to stand out? If he got him to his team, whether it was the salary or the future, it would be brighter. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he would stand out, but, if he trained in his team, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. If he wanted to be reborn, how could there be no price? Chapter 8:15. Li Xiaoyun's cold expression carried an unruly smile. The patrol officer, who had been left behind, only felt a chill run down his spine, as if he was being stared at by a ferocious beast. Jing Yunjiao, on the other hand, didn't have any other opinions. She trusted Li Xiaoyun a lot. Even though he looked a little scary right now, if he really wanted to deal with that little patrol officer, he wouldn't have cooperated with the investigation just now. Moreover, after knowing him for so long, she had never seen him use his power to bully others without any principles. He seemed a little cunning and insidious, but he was also very well behaved. Even if old Master Li wasn't taken into consideration, just based on Li Xiaoyun's status alone, even if he killed the person who angered him, no one would dare to find trouble with him. His current appearance was almost more low-key than any other young master from a powerful family. Li Xiaoyun directly sent Jing Yunjiao back to school. Jing Yunjiao's day had been chaotic, but at this time, she also felt a little sweet. Li Xiaoyun personally opened the car door for her and carried her things. He was so well behaved that he looked like a little wife. Jing Yunjiao felt like she was bullying him. Before leaving, she saw that he was a little resentful, so she braced herself and threw herself into his arms to show their intimacy. The hug lasted for a few seconds. Jing Yunjiao's face was already burning red, and she hurried back to school. Li Xiaoyun looked at her back with gentle eyes. Jing Yunjiao was still holding the bouquet of flowers in her hands. In addition, she also had the clothes that Li Xiaoyun had chosen for her. She looked like she was returning from a rewarding journey. Therefore, when she entered the dormitory, Hu Tianxian and the others were shocked and surrounded her to look at her left and right. Women in love are different. Look at her face, pink and tender. Hu Tianxian ate snacks and kept looking at her. When she saw the clothes she was wearing, she was also a little surprised. Jing Jing, this dress suits you so well. It's so beautiful. You are definitely the most beautiful girl in our dormitory. Yarrow Baobao quickly followed. It's not an exaggeration to say that you are the campus belle. Ren Xingyue added. I don't deny it. Hu Tianxian also praised. If it was someone else, she might feel a little jealous. However, towards Jing Yunjiao, that kind of emotion could not appear at all. Because the two of them were quite close, she was very clear that Jing Yunjiao did not care much about what others thought of her. Even if she was jealous to death, it would not affect Jing Yunjiao at all. Therefore, she would not do such a thankless thing. Jing Yunjiao's eyes flashed. He quickly put away the clothes and found a vase to put the flowers in. When Black King saw the roses, he immediately ran over. He held one in his mouth and looked very cute. Jing Yunjiao suddenly remembered that when Li Xiaoyun gave Black King to her, Black King looked like this now. It seemed that Li Xiaoyun had scolded him for a long time. Yarrow Baobao and the others kept gossiping. However, Jing Yunjiao was a man of few words. His answers were also ambiguous. In the end, he blushed and looked at his book, seeking peace. However, that night, after the few of them fell asleep, Jing Yunjiao put the roses in his space and soaked them in the blue spring water for a while. They became more tender and beautiful. He was afraid that even if another month passed, the flowers would not wilt. After falling asleep, he had a rare good dream. The 3 words Li Xiaoyun kept lingering in his mind. Until the next day of class, Jing Yunjiao was still a little uneasy. Jing Yunjiao, show me the notes you took these few days. Du Rongyang could not help but ask in class. The classes had already started for a month. He did not believe that Jing Yunjiao could remember everything without making any mistakes. Chapter 8:16. After Du Rongyang's words, everyone in the class looked at Jing Yunjiao. Some of them were waiting to see her make a fool of herself, some were worried, and some were very confident. Many of Jing Yunjiao's classmates had borrowed her notes, so they were certain she wasn't slacking off. They were just waiting for her to take them out. Jing Yunjiao, why aren't you moving? Du Rongyang frowned, looking a little more serious. The notes weren't in her hands at all. She was using loose-leaf paper. She would hand over new notes to Han Nan, the class monitor, after each class. Because there were too many people who came to borrow notes, it was troublesome to manage, so she didn't have to worry about it. At this moment, Jing Yunjiao turned to look at Han Nan, only to see him rummaging through his drawers. He seemed to be in a hurry. After a few seconds, he stood up and said, Teacher Du, her notes were left with me, but they're gone. Maybe one of the students took them and looked at them. Han Nan was a little angry. Usually, when someone borrowed a note, they would write it down, and the pages would be numbered. He would check them every time. But last Friday, the notes were still in his drawer, and now they were gone. Someone must have borrowed them and didn't tell him. Is that so? Well then, the students who took the notes can bring them up. Du Rongyang lowered his head and tidied up the podium. He seemed to believe Han Nan. Han Nan looked at Jing Yunjiao apologetically. But Jing Yunjiao just chuckled. Sure enough, she had expected this the day Du Rongyang asked her to take notes. The class fell silent. Du Rongyang frowned and said with some displeasure, What's going on? Didn't anyone take the notes? Class monitor, were you just looking for an excuse for Jing Yunjiao? Unity and friendship are good, but a person should be brave enough to take responsibility. No, Teacher Du, Jing Yunjiao really took the notes seriously. Many of the students know. They all read them. Han Nan hurriedly said, a little flustered. The number of times he borrowed Jing Yunjiao's notes was the most, mainly because he wanted to talk to her more. Luckily, Jing Yunjiao had trusted him and passed the notes to him for safekeeping, but he had actually lost them. This kind of mistake made his face burn. Teacher Du, there's no problem with Jing Yunjiao's notes. I've been borrowing them before last Sunday. A student suddenly spoke up. Du Rongyang sighed, adjusted his glasses, and said earnestly, "Students, I know Jing Yunjiao is popular, but this is a task given to her by my teacher. No matter the reason, it's wrong of her to fail. But I'm not an unreasonable person. Jing Yunjiao, translate this book, and write a 5,000-word." Okay, let's continue. As soon as he finished speaking, the class was in an uproar. The foreign language book that Du Rongyang picked up was very thick. They felt that this seemingly peaceful exchange was hiding a murderous intent, making them feel uncomfortable all over. Moreover, Jing Yunjiao's temperament was even colder. She was clearly a little girl of the same age, but her words were neither servile nor overbearing. It also made people feel that this teacher Du was indeed too much. Previously, when Du Rongyang issued this task, everyone felt that it was a little difficult. However, at that time, everyone was immersed in the news of Jing Yunjiao, the college entrance examination's top scorer, so no one spoke up for her. Now that they thought about it, the teacher's method was somewhat thought-provoking. There were many ways to train students, but Du Rongyang's method seemed to be deliberately targeted. Jing Yunjiao was not angry. At this time, she took out the copy of the notebook from her bag and walked up to him. She placed it directly on the podium and said, "I lost the original manuscript, but this is the second copy I wrote down from memory. Teacher Du, take a good look at it. However, I'll have to trouble you to return it to me after you read it because I still have to show it to the department head." Chapter 8:18. There was a thick notebook on the podium. Du Rongyang was shocked and a little suspicious. When he opened it, his expression instantly turned ugly. Jing Yunjiao's handwriting was neat and didn't look sloppy at all. Moreover, the words were smooth and familiar. It was indeed the content of his class. However, she wanted to hand it over to the dean. What did she mean? Was she going to complain? "So you didn't lose your notebook, teacher. It's not that I didn't lose it, but I wrote more than one. Moreover, Teacher Du, I'm very suspicious of your character now. I don't think you have the ability to teach us. Just now, there were clearly students who testified for me, but you suspected that they were lying. How can we be at ease with a teacher who doesn't trust students at all?" Jing Yunjiao sneered. Du Rongyang glared at him. "Jing Yunjiao, I just think that they will exonerate you. Moreover, since you have a backup notebook, why don't you take it out? Teacher Du, you really think the worst of others." Jing Yunjiao's expression was contemptuous. He reached out and took out his notebook. Then, he lifted his foot and walked out. He thought that he was silently targeting her, but in fact, he had already fallen for it from the moment he asked her to record the learning content. Moreover, since she had already expected him to do something, how could she not be prepared at all? Jing Yunjiao's movements were clean and neat. Du Rongyang looked at him angrily. "You guys study by yourselves." After saying that, he hurriedly followed. However, the students in this class were generally arrogant and difficult to train. When they saw such a thing, they were naturally curious. As soon as Du Rongyang left, they immediately followed. They passed through layers of corridors and arrived at the door of the dean's office. Jing Yunjiao had already arrived and told him the whole story. Du Rongyang was drenched in cold sweat. He quickly explained, "Dean, you saw it too. She has the ability. Do you want me to do it just because I have the ability? Then, Dean, I think you have the ability to donate all your belongings to others. Then, do you want to pay for it?" Jing Yunjiao retorted directly and said, "Dean, for the past month, I've been in charge of recording everything he said and I didn't have time to think about it. It affected me greatly. Moreover, Teacher Du clearly saw that I never stopped writing and even had a classmate who proved that there was no problem with my notebook, but he still insisted on punishing me. I think he's deliberately targeting me. Director, she's talking nonsense. She's just a child. Why would I target her?" Du Rongyang immediately said. The director knew Jing Yunjiao. After all, He was Mo Zhengyan's student. It was hard for him not to know him. Teacher Do you really want me to say it clearly? Jing Yunzhao's eyes flickered as he continued, wasn't your niece the one who posted on the forum to accuse me and my teacher? My feud with her started during the military training. It's natural for you to stand up for her. Initially, she didn't know about this at all. However, Hu Tianxian had already helped her investigate when she sensed that something was wrong with Du Rongyang. Therefore, she already knew about this fact. As soon as he said this, Du Rongyang's face instantly tensed up. The school didn't know that Zhu Maijun was his niece. After all, he was just a small assistant professor and Zhu Maijun was an ordinary freshman. No one would pay much attention to them. He didn't expect Jing Yunzhao to know about this. The dean also became serious. Teacher Du, is Jing Yunzhao telling the truth? Dean, Zhu Maijun is my niece, but she has already been expelled. Moreover, how can I target her for a child's personal grudge? I'm really doing this for her own good. If you don't believe me, you can ask the students in the class. Do I usually target her? Not only that, I even ask the students in the class to use her as a role model and praise her whenever they meet people. I've never said anything harsh to her. Chapter 8:19. Noticing the students outside the door, Du Rongyang turned around and dragged Han Nan over. With a pained expression on his face, he asked, Student Han Nan, please tell me, did I say anything against Jing Yunzhao in class? Or was there anything wrong with my wording? Han Nan couldn't react in time and shook his head subconsciously. Director, he's the class monitor of this class. His words are very trustworthy. Also, didn't Jing Yunzhao already record everything I said? You can check it out. You can definitely prove my innocence, Du Rongyang said. Jing Yunzhao raised his eyebrows. Mr. Du, just because you restrained yourself doesn't mean that you didn't mean to target me. Besides, since you don't want to admit it, let's look for it. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to find the notebook in your office, Jing Yunzhao said. The notebook had disappeared on Friday. Since she was willing to let others touch it, she must have put some protective measures on it. She had sprinkled something on it. As long as someone touched the notebook, there would be a trace of the special powder left on their hands. No matter how they washed it within 3 days, there would be a trace of the smell. She believed that the notebook hadn't been thrown away because the smell on Du Rongyang's hands was still very strong. It wasn't as light as the smell on other students' hands. It was obvious that he had touched the notebook today. When Jing Yunzhao said that, Du Rongyang's expression changed. Dean, according to what she said, I'm a thief. Du Rongyang said angrily. It seemed that he had been wronged. Of course, the dean found it ridiculous to search a teacher's office for a notebook. However, Jing Yunzhao was firm. I'm going to search your office. If you can't make the decision, I can ask the teacher to ask the dean. In this school, Mo Zhengyang was her backer. Although she said that she was taking advantage of her position to bully others, what could she do when dealing with someone like Du Rongyang? When Jing Yunzhao said this, the dean's expression did not look too good. He said, how about this, Xiao Du? Let her go to your office to take a look. If she doesn't find anything, we'll punish her according to your request just now. Whether it's a self-reflection letter or a translated essay, we can't miss anything. What do you think? Although they were not in the same faculty, Mo Zhengyan's achievements had reached a point where no one could ignore him. The dean and he had been best friends for many years. It would not be nice to make a fuss over such a small matter. Moreover, Mo Zhengyang had taken good care of Jing Yunzhao during the Chinese arts exhibition. If she really went to Professor Mo, the result would probably be the same. Instead, there would be an additional procedure that would affect his impression in the dean's heart. Du Ranyang's temples were throbbing non-stop, and his teeth were tightly clenched. However, since the dean had already said so, his thoughts were useless. He could only let Jing Yunzhao and the dean walk to his office. He could only pray in his heart. Du Ranyang used an office for 2 people. The bookshelves and desks were neatly arranged and did not affect each other. There was no one in the office at this time. Jing Yunzhao walked over directly. Du Ranyang's expression became a little solemn. His eyes were in a daze, but he pretended to be calm. There were many books on the bookshelf, and there were also many notebooks. Jing Yunzhao's notebook was very ordinary, and it was not easy to find it. However, if it was any other book, it would be fine. However, that notebook was sprinkled with medicinal powder that she could easily identify. She had even smeared a few pages with medicinal liquid. That smell was extremely attractive to her. Chapter 820. Alright, Jing Yunzhao, look for it, but don't mess it up. The dean frowned and said with some displeasure. In his opinion, he still did not believe that a dignified lecturer would do such a thing. After all, if it was exposed, it would be very embarrassing. However, Jing Yunzhao's temper was too strange. If he did not let her look for it, she would definitely not feel at ease. Jing Yunzhao nodded and moved closer to the bookcase. Her fingertips brushed past the side edges of the books on the bookcase. It seemed that she had no clue. However, this was only Jing Yunzhao's deliberate action. After all, if she directly took out the things, it would seem that she had deliberately wronged Du Rongyang. She would definitely not give him a chance to continue quibbling. Jing Yunzhao casually looked at the bookcase. From time to time, she would take out a book and flip through it. Then, she would go to the desk to look at the other things on it. The cabinets at the bottom were all locked. Jing Yunzhao used her qi and used force to pull out the drawer. The wood on top was slightly damaged. The quality of the table is not very good. I didn't do it on purpose, Jing Yunzhao said simply. After saying that, she secretly smiled and put the things inside on the table. Du Rongyang's eyelids twitched. He heard Jing Yunzhao say again, "Teacher Du, I didn't expect your office to have this thing. There are only 2 or 3 left in the box. It seems that you use it often." What Jing Yunzhao took out was actually a condom. Even she herself didn't expect this. Du Rongyang had a wife and a son. His wife was at home, so he did not use this kind of thing at all. Especially in his office. If word got out, it would inevitably make people's imagination run wild. Du Rongyang immediately rushed over. "Dean, listen to me. I found this from a student." The dean glanced at Du Rongyang coldly. He only felt embarrassed. It was really disgusting for a teacher to have this kind of thing found by a student. Then, Jing Yunzhao took out a book from the drawer. She opened it and smiled. She handed it to the dean. "This doesn't seem to be a foreign classic, right? I can't fully understand the things inside, but I can roughly guess the meaning. If it is translated, this book should be classified as a yellow book, right? But could it be that this thing was also found by a student? There shouldn't be many freshmen who can translate the contents of this book, right?" He was indeed a lecturer. Even the pornographic novels he read were foreign versions. The word poor could no longer describe Du Rongyang's expression. Jing Yunzhao didn't want to continue playing with him, so he slowly went to the bookshelf and glanced at it again. Finally, he took out a book with other book covers stuck on it. Du Rongyang was having a headache. Originally, he was going to throw this notebook away, but before throwing it away, he looked at it and felt a little reluctant. After all, it recorded the content of his lecture, and it was so flawless. It would be a pity to throw it away. Before today's class, he even took a look at the content of his lecture. Because of these notes, he felt a lot more confident. He even couldn't help but feel that with his level, he could be called a real professor and not an assistant professor who was about to be evaluated for the title of associate professor. However, he did not expect that Jing Yunzhao would realize that he was the one who had taken the notes and even dared to search his office. It was really a case of losing the whole game with one wrong move. It was over. The dean looked at the notes that had been taken out and was angry. "Du Rongyang, you're really... I don't know what to say about you. How embarrassing. It was fine if it was a pornographic novel. After all, he was a man." He tried his best to understand. However, deliberately hiding a student's notes and then making a false accusation was definitely not something a normal teacher would do. To think that he had felt that Du Rongyang had been wronged. It was a waste of his kindness. Chapter 821. Jing Yunzhao smiled faintly, but her expression was cold and detached. She sized up Du Rongyang, whose face was currently extremely pale. Her eyes were calm and gloomy as she continued, "Teacher Du, I've already found the item, what else is there to say?" Du Rongyang's expression was stiff. He stood there motionless. "Dean. I don't know how the notes came to be. Maybe a student put them on my desk without my knowledge, and I put them on the bookshelf, is that so?" Of course, the dean didn't believe it. However, he was a teacher of University A after all, and it would be bad if word got out. The two of them had a personal grudge, so it was naturally impossible for Du Rongyang to be fired because of this. However, he would definitely be criticized, and Du Rongyang could forget about the position of associate professor. Of course, the most important thing was the teaching problem. He was afraid that Du Rongyang would have to reflect on himself for the time being and forget about teaching Jing Yunjiao's class. Jing Yunjiao also knew in her heart that although she had caught Du Rongyang red-handed, she still had to see how he would quibble. The things that were found in his drawer were actually not very useful. Just like what he was doing now, the condoms were found in a student's room. He could explain it clearly in one sentence. Even if others did not believe him, as long as he insisted, no one could do anything about it. As for the foreign language book, it was his own collection after all. It didn't affect others, and he didn't take it out in front of everyone. He just casually said that he bought the wrong book and put it in the wrong place, and promised that he wouldn't do it again, and this matter would be over. However, in the end, his reputation was ruined. For a refined scum like him, without a reputation, there would be no future, and the consequences would not be small. Moreover, university life was still long. Du Rongyang still had many opportunities to humiliate himself. If he didn't accept it in his heart, sooner or later, he would court death himself. Now that he was transferred away from her, it was much quieter. The students outside the classroom were shocked when they saw this scene. They immediately felt disgusted with Du Rongyang. When they thought of his attitude towards Jing Yunjiao for the past month, they felt even more disgusted. They more or less relied on the teacher, but now this teacher used reality to teach them a lesson, telling them that they couldn't judge a person by their appearance. She didn't expect such a kind person to be so unbearable in private. His classmates rolled their eyes. Their attitude of looking at him as if he was a piece of trash was a huge blow to Du Rongyang. He had been working at a university for quite a few years now. His reputation had always been pretty good, especially because his looks belonged to the righteous type, causing the students to be especially respectful towards him. But now, because of Jing Yunjiao, that beautiful image had instantly become a thing of the past. Du Rongyang felt that his future had become somewhat gloomy. He clenched his teeth and moved closer to Jing Yunjiao. With a sincere expression, he said, "Student Jing Yunjiao, it's all my fault. I've misunderstood you. I apologize to you." Jing Yunjiao glanced at him. "Teacher Du, it's better to stay away from me. Because when I see you, I feel nauseous." After saying that, Du Rongyang was petrified on the spot. If it wasn't for his patience and hypocrisy, he really wanted to strangle Jing Yunjiao to death. The dean was not disgusted by this. Instead, he felt that Du Rongyang was reaping what he sowed. In front of the students, he naturally wouldn't say anything unpleasant, but it didn't mean that he could forgive the teacher's actions. After a while, the students were chased back to their classes. Jing Yunjiao also went back, but Du Rongyang stayed in the office to receive a lecture. Chapter 822. Du Rongyang's behavior was considered bad, so he was replaced on the same day. The dean personally came forward to introduce a new teacher to appease the students. As a result, the class became a little lively. The new teacher was an associate professor in name only. He was a little older than Du Rongyang. His classes were organized and easy to understand. The content of his classes was also humorous. He was more popular than Du Rongyang. The new teacher obviously knew about Jing Yunjiao's notes, so she took her notes and read them. When she returned the notes, there were a few more pieces of paper inside. She corrected the incorrect sentences in the notes, and her attitude was serious and responsible. After changing teachers, Jing Yunjiao naturally didn't need to record the contents of the class anymore. However, This new teacher was especially keen on her handwriting and gave her some materials to organize and copy. It was just that the task was very small and didn't take up much time. Furthermore, the organized materials were all copied by the new teacher and everyone had a copy. This caused Jing Yunjiao's reputation among the students to increase. Compared to the new teacher, Du Rongyang's life was much more difficult. He was directly left idle, and even his work was similar to that of an assistant lecturer, so he was very sullen. The difference between an assistant lecturer and an assistant professor was not the same level. The former could not even be compared to a lecturer, so it was like being liberated. Du Rongyang, who had always been able to endure, could not bear it anymore. He was very irritated every day. Most importantly, the lecturers and professors who had a good relationship with him immediately distanced themselves from him when they heard the reason why he was left idle. The general character of the teachers of a university was not to be criticized. They had to go through layers of screening, and their files were absolutely clean. Generally, when they first started, there was a very long probation period. If they had bad conduct, they would definitely not stay. That strict process created the strict school spirit of a university. If Du Rongyang was not extremely patient, he might not have been able to stay until now. Seeing his years of hard work go down the drain, Du Rongyang's heart was bleeding. On this day, he saw Jing Yunjiao pass by the door of her office. After thinking for a while, Du Rongyang hurriedly followed her. Jing Yunjiao, he politely called. Jing Yunjiao turned around and saw Du Rongyang's listless face. His eyes were lifeless and he looked very haggard. But even so, he was still dressed formally. Other than the large mole on his chin, he looked very proper no matter how one looked at him. "Teacher Du, what's the matter?" Jing Yunjiao smiled, but he looked inexplicably cold. I want to explain to you, but I know that no matter what I say, you won't believe me," Du Rongyang said incoherently. After a while, he said, "I want to have a good talk with you." Jing Yunjiao pondered for a moment and said, "Teacher Du, if you have something to say it now." This Du Rongyang was not a good person at all, and he wanted to talk. I'm afraid he's up to no good, right? However, she was curious about what this Du guy was trying to do. It might not be convenient now because I have to go to the old building of the medical department to look for something. Why don't you go with me? Du Rongyang said again. Jing Yunjiao snorted softly. Teacher Du teaches foreign languages. You shouldn't have anything to do with the medical department, right? That's right, but I have a friend who wants a model. There are many things in the old building that are not in use. I'll go and borrow it. It won't affect the other students' use. Jing Yunjiao, what I did before was wrong. I sincerely apologize to you. I also want to use this opportunity to get to know you more and eliminate the previous misunderstanding. Chapter 8:23. Du Rongyang's expression was solemn, but there was a hint of panic in his eyes. He was also extremely nervous. He had talked to students before, but at that time, he had the students' grades, credits, and all kinds of comments in his hands. Moreover, he would only look for those who were more introverted and timid, so most of them would be more cooperative. However, he was facing Jing Yunjiao now. This girl was extremely smart, so he might not succeed. However, just as he was thinking about it, Jing Yunjiao suddenly nodded. Okay, let's go take a look. She knew about the old building. It was located in the southwest corner of a university. It used to be a few buildings side by side, but that building was the oldest, so it was slowly abandoned. Most of the rooms in the building were used for storage purposes, while the other buildings were used as a gathering place for the school's clubs. There were usually people going in and out of the building used by the clubs, but it was different for the building with all kinds of old things. Usually, people rarely went there. Moreover, because there were school property in the building, there were people guarding the bottom of the building. Entering and exiting the building required a certificate. Du Rongyang did not have much hope. When he saw Jing Yunjiao nod, he was a little stunned. After a few seconds, he quickly smiled and said flatteringly, That's great. Then let's go there now. In fact, there are not only things from the medical department there. There are also some older books. I often go there to look for some information. If you see anything later, you can borrow it in my name. It shouldn't be a problem, Du Rongyang hurriedly said, looking particularly kind. Jing Yunjiao raised her eyebrows and did not say anything. A university was not small, and the old building was a little far away. It took them a full 20 minutes to reach it. Along the way, Jing Yunjiao noticed that Du Rongyang kept chatting with her, as if he was afraid that she would suddenly change her mind and not want to go. The building was quiet, and there was only a slightly older person guarding downstairs to register. The person in charge of registration took a look at his ID and didn't ask any questions. The two of them walked in together. The lights in the building were dim, and the air was filled with the smell of dust. It was very quiet. The two of them entered the elevator, but Du Rongyang pressed the button for basement 1. Jing Yunjiao's eyes flashed. She had been in a university for a long time, so how could she not know what was in the basement of the old building? Isn't Teacher Du looking for a model? Why did you go to the place where the corpses are? Jing Yunjiao asked in a strange tone. The voice was so cold that it made people's scalp tingle. Du Rongyang also felt very uncomfortable when he heard it, but he also felt that it might be because of the damp and cold downstairs, so he didn't think much about it. There were some corpses that had been treated with drugs, which were used for dissection and observation by the medical department. Oh, I heard that a medical student left his model here last time, Du Rongyang explained dryly. No one would believe such a clumsy lie. Jing Yunjiao just laughed mockingly and didn't say anything more. Did he think that she would be afraid of where the corpse was? Jing Yunjiao walked in step by step. The room with all kinds of corpses was filled with a nauseating smell. The smell of corpses mixed with the smell of medicine was very challenging to one's nerves. Teacher Du, you have achieved your goal. You don't have to pretend anymore, right? Jing Yunjiao mocked. When Du Rongyang heard this, he closed the door and said fiercely, "You are quite smart. Then why are you still willing to come with me? Jing Yunjiao, cooperate with me obediently. I will let you out after I take a picture. Otherwise, don't blame me for using brute force." Chapter 824. Jing Yunjiao chuckled when she heard that. It seemed that Ju Maijun had not told Du Rongyang about her methods. That was really sad. Photos. What kind of photos do you want? Jing Yunjiao snorted as she held the phone in her pocket. What do you think? Don't play dumb with me. You're a girl. No matter what, you can't resist me. If you cooperate, you'll suffer less. Otherwise, you'll be the one suffering later, Du Rongyang said again. As he spoke, he had already taken out his phone. Take it off yourself. Jing Yunjiao sneered. You want to take my photos to threaten me? You want me to lie to the director and absolve you? Or you want me to ask the teacher to put in a good word for you so that you won't be awarded the title of associate professor, right? Professor Du, you're also a teacher. It's really a disgrace to do such things in private. H, I know you're good at talking. Jing Yunjiao, Maijun told me that you're a girl from the countryside who got some benefits because of your face. Even Mo Zhengyang spoke up for you. If it weren't for Mo Zhengyang backing you up, the director wouldn't have treated me so coldly. You have to take off your clothes today. After you go out, do as I say. Otherwise, I'll post your photos on the internet and make you unable to raise your head for the rest of your life. If Professor Mo knows that you're such a person in private, do you think he'll continue to accept you as a student? How can a girl like you stay in a university? Du Rongyang looked confident. Jing Yunjiao did have a backer, but was it stable? Not at all. Mo Zhengyang only liked her talent, but he also knew that Mo Zhengyang valued character more. If she did not want her future to be ruined, she had to listen to him. Professor Du, judging from your attitude, it seems that this isn't the first time you've threatened people. Jing Yunjiao said again. Cut the crap. Are you going to take it off or not? Du Rongyang said as he walked over. Jing Yunjiao took 2 steps back and said, Professor Du, it seems that the things in your drawer are used in school. How many girls have you harmed? Did you threaten me with photos too? Don't worry. Although you have a pretty face, I'm not interested in you. I won't touch you. Du Rongyang's expression was extremely disgusted. He reached out to pull Jing Yunjiao's clothes. Jing Yunjiao smiled. Before he could even touch her, she kicked him. With a bang, he fell into the pool filled with corpses. The floating corpses looked extremely disgusting. The color of the corpses was dull and the texture of the flesh was like bacon. Du Rongyang was shocked and quickly crawled out. However, in the blink of an eye, he was crushed under another corpse that Jing Yunjiao had thrown over. "Teacher Du, don't come over. Otherwise, I won't be polite." Jing Yunjiao held his phone and shouted at the microphone before pausing the recording. A sinister smile appeared on his face. "Professor Du, from now on, everything I do is to protect myself. I'm afraid you'll have to work a little harder." Du Rongyang's heart trembled. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his arm and immediately screamed. However, this was an old building and there was no one else around. In addition, there was a thick door on the first floor with excellent soundproofing. Even if he screamed until his throat was broken, no one would come over. After crippling his arm, Jing Yunjiao pressed him against the corpses. Instantly, his face and mouth made intimate contact with the corpses soaked in drugs. Du Rongyang felt nauseous and wanted to resist. However, in the next second, Jing Yunjiao's attack came crashing down like a hailstorm. Chapter 825. Jing Yunjiao only wanted to finish him off quickly. She did not aim for his vital parts at all. A series of chaotic noises came from the room, making one's hair stand on end. Du Rongyang felt as if his whole body was about to split open. The plot had completely deviated from the original direction. It was not the first time he had done something like this, but it was the first time he had received such treatment. He was extremely terrified. What he was most afraid of was that Jing Yunjiao had stuffed a corpse into his mouth. He could not open his mouth at all. The smell filled his nose and challenged his nerves. He was about to faint. Jing Yunjiao's expression was cold. In this dark place, it seemed a little strange. Her eyes were as deep as ink. That look was branded in the depths of Du Rongyang's soul and could not be erased. She was even scarier than these corpses. It was as if she wanted to kill him. Of course, Jing Yunjiao would not do that. If he defended himself too much, she would be the one at a disadvantage. After more than 10 minutes of beating, there was no place on Du Rongyang's body that was relaxed. Jing Yunjiao finally kicked his lower abdomen. Du Rongyang's veins bulged and he fainted instantly. Jing Yunjiao dusted her hands and tidied her clothes. Only then did she walk out. The door was tightly shut by her. Du Rongyang could not move at all. With the corpse as his companion, the smell was enough to make him suffer. Once out of the old building, Jing Yunjiao called Mo Zhengyang and told him what had happened in detail. After Mo Zhengyang heard about it, he told the old man at the door. "Old man, I just knocked out the teacher who came with me. The director should be here soon." Jing Yunjiao restrained her anger and said in a panic. The old man was shocked when he heard that. "Young man, don't joke around. Why did you hit him?" "Old man, the teacher is not a good person. He lied to me and said that he wanted to take the model and that there were many books here. But I did not expect him to take me to the place where the corpses were placed in the basement. He even wanted to take a picture of me. I was scared and struggled. I learned some martial arts in the past, so I hit him a little hard," Jing Yunjiao said again. When the old man heard this, he was so shocked that he could not speak. He hurriedly wanted to go in to take a look, but was stopped by Jing Yunjiao. "Uncle, you should wait for the dean and the rest. I've locked Teacher Du inside. His mental state is a bit abnormal, he's currently going crazy. It wouldn't be good if he hurts us." The old man was half convinced and half doubtful, feeling a little uneasy. Jing Yunjiao glanced at the registration booklet and asked, "Uncle, does Teacher Du come here often? Is it the same person?" "Him?" Sir System thought for a moment before replying, "Yes, he did. Once or twice a month, he would bring students along to collect or deliver things. They are all female students, right?" Jing Yunjiao asked again. Hearing this, the old man's face stiffened. "That's right, they're all female students. Those female students are very beautiful and very obedient. They don't seem to like talking. Jing Yunjiao's eyes turned cold. Du Rongyang was not wronged. Old man, you must show that manual to the director later. I know some martial arts to protect myself, so the teacher did not do anything to me. But the other students are different. No matter what, it is strange that teacher Du only brought the female students here. After all, if it is to move things, the male students are obviously more suitable, Jing Yunjiao reminded. The entry and exit registration was under Du Rongyang's name. The students' names were not recorded. However, this was not a bad thing. If the names of all the students were recorded, it would affect them greatly in the future. Chapter 8:26. After being reminded by Jing Yunjiao, the old man's expression turned solemn and somewhat regretful. Little student, is that teacher really a bad person? He looks quite refined. Is there a misunderstanding? Sigh, I'm in charge of watching this building. If he really did something like that, I'll feel very uneasy. Jing Yunjiao shook his head. Don't think too much. This has nothing to do with you. The old man was in his twilight years. He had arranged for him to be here so that his job would be easier. A university had always been clean. Who would have thought that Du Rongyang was a wolf in sheep's clothing? Moreover, very few people came to the old building. It was a little messy inside. Not many people in this world would be so hardcore as to come to this kind of place to do that kind of thing. Moreover, the old man couldn't possibly keep an eye on Du Rongyang all the time. The old building wasn't small. How could he keep following Du Rongyang? His responsibility was to register, not to be a security guard and maintain the peace of the building. Jing Yunjiao's voice seemed to have a calming effect. Although the old man sighed, his expression was slightly better. He anxiously waited for the dean to arrive. After Jing Yunjiao told Mo Zhengyang about the matter, Mo Zhengyang immediately handed it over to the dean and the department head. He rushed over without a word. He was travel-worn and had a worried expression. She had been with Mo Zhengyang for some time now. They got along very well. She was popular with the old man. Professor Mo treated her like his own granddaughter. He taught her everything he could and was very concerned about her daily life. What's going on? Where's that bastard? Professor Mo yelled angrily when he saw Jing Yunjiao. Old Mo, why are you in such a hurry? We haven't reached a conclusion yet. The dean shook his head helplessly. His old friend had no wife or children. In the past, he wanted him to find a few students to raise as his children, but he was rejected. Who knew that he would treat Jing Yunjiao so well now? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was his granddaughter. However, he really didn't know what to say when he saw how protective he was of her. Dean, little Jing is my student. I know what kind of person she is. She would never accuse others. Mo Zhengyang was full of pride. Professor, Dean, Professor Du is in the morgue. Also, I recorded the conversation. Jing Yunjiao handed the phone over. The group then walked in. Jing Yunjiao's recording started when Du Rongyang asked to go to the old building with her. It was inevitable that she would hold back when she met with someone like Du Rongyang to prevent any accidents. In the quiet building, other than the sound of their footsteps, only Du Rongyang's voice could be heard from the phone. At the beginning, Du Rongyang's voice was very polite. The dean's expression wasn't bad and he didn't feel that there was anything wrong. However, when the second part was played, his face immediately darkened. Photos. What kind of photos do you want? What do you think? Don't play dumb with me. You're a girl. No matter what, you can't resist me. If you cooperate, you'll suffer less. Otherwise, you'll be the one suffering later. Take it off yourself. Mo Zhengyang was even angrier. He was extremely satisfied with Jing Yunjiao as a student. She was modest and polite, unfazed by favor or disgrace, naturally gifted and intelligent, and had a pure and kind character. It made him sigh with emotion in his heart. There were even times when he couldn't help but worry that she would be tainted by the messy people outside. However, every time he thought of this, he would feel that his worries were groundless and he was overthinking things. He didn't expect that there would be such a hypocrite who would slap his face and bully his student. Chapter 8:27. Mo Zhengyan's furious gaze made the dean's face burn. At that moment, the old man opened his mouth and told him about how Du Rongyang would bring different female students over every month. He also attached the registration booklet. The dean's expression turned even uglier. The dean only felt that he was extremely unlucky. He never thought that Du Rongyang would cause such a big mess. It was one thing for him to court death, but he even implicated others. If others knew that there was such a scum in their department, where would he put his face? Also, he brought students over every month, but he only found out now. The dean would definitely think that he was not good at management. However, although Mo Zhengyang was furious, he also heaved a sigh of relief. Jing Yunjiao was not bullied. From what she said, she knew some martial arts. In addition, she was too scared at that time, so she unleashed her potential. As long as she did not kill him, it would be fine. Not long after, the few of them arrived at the door. The dean hurriedly went forward to open the door. However, when the door opened, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. They saw Du Rongyang lying on the ground with a corpse's fist in his mouth. He looked especially disgusting. The corpses on the ground were scattered, and there were a few beside him. Their postures were strange, and they seemed to have been damaged. Du Rongyang did not go crazy like Jing Yunjiao said. Instead, his face was pale, and there seemed to be blood coming out of the crotch of his pants. He looked a little scary. First call an ambulance. Although he was a scum, he could not let Du Rongyang lie there. Professor Mo's expression became better. Serves him right. As a teacher, he's not upright. He might as well die. Cough. Old Mo, restrain yourself. He's already like this. The dean said symbolically, but there was not much sympathy on his face. Jing Yunjiao's recording was conclusive. Of course, he had to secretly investigate the female students who were victims later. Other than that, he had to destroy the things that Du Rongyang took. It was better to solve this kind of matter privately than to let everyone know. Jing Yunjiao was fine. She did not suffer and even beat someone up, but the others were not. The school had to bear some responsibility, but they also had to protect their reputation. In addition, they had to compensate them. Although no one else knew about it, as the dean, he could not pretend that nothing had happened. The dean was not a selfish person. Otherwise, he would not be able to get along with Professor Mo. The ambulance arrived not long after, but the few of them didn't even get close. Du Rongyang's appearance was too pitiful and horrifying. Even a grown man would probably have nightmares if they saw him. Who could stand it? However, when they looked at Jing Yunjiao, their gazes were somewhat complicated, especially the dean. It was as if he wanted to bore a hole in Jing Yunjiao's face with his gaze. He didn't know if this little girl was psychopathic, but he always felt that she was very sinister. From the recording, she could also guess that Du Rongyang was up to no good, but she still followed him. Not only did Du Rongyang expose himself, but she also beat him up. Just now, when the nurse put him on the stretcher, she looked at him, the director of the hospital, strangely. It seemed that he should have a chat with old Mo. Maybe he needed to find a psychiatrist to examine this little girl. Old Mo often praised Jing Yunjiao in front of him for being obedient and sensible, but what she was doing now was completely different from being obedient. Could it be that she had dual personality? Faced with the scrutinizing gazes of the dean and dean, Jing Yunjiao's expression was calm. After the nurse carried Du Rongyang out, she even lifted her feet and walked over. She picked up Du Rongyang's dropped phone from one of the bodies and handed it to the dean. I don't know if there's a video in his phone. Although I don't recommend making a big deal out of it, we can let the police handle it in a low-key manner. Chapter 8:28. The room was still filled with an unpleasant smell, and the corpses looked very horrifying. The dean looked at the phone that Jing Yunjiao handed over. He didn't know whether to take it or not. In the end, he took a step back and glanced at the dean. The dean gritted his teeth and took the phone. The phone was taken from the corpse, and it was still stained with some antiseptic smell. It irritated his nose and made his stomach churn. He couldn't help but want to vomit. The dean didn't want to stay there for a moment longer. He quickly called out and left with the paramedics. Jing Yun Zhao smiled, while Professor Mo whispered from the side, "Little Jing Ah, you're really naughty, tormenting the dean like this." The dean was actually quite approachable and didn't put on airs. However, he was still in a high position and rarely came into contact with these things. How could he stand it? Moreover, not to mention the dean, even the medical students were not completely immune to corpses. They were somewhat disgusted. Jing Yun Zhao pursed her lips and smiled, not allowing her to know or deny. The ambulance left quickly. Many students were confused after seeing it. They didn't know what had happened. Jing Yun Zhao only informed 2 or 3 people to prevent the matter from being known. Just as she expected, the dean directly called the police and discussed with the police to deal with it quietly. They first went to the Du family to look for evidence. Du Rongyang's wife was born in a business family. She used to be a rich young lady, but because she wasn't an only child, she didn't have much wealth. However, she had good connections. Therefore, when the police came, Du Rongyang's wife immediately wanted to find someone to help. However, this idea didn't last long. It was because the technician sent by the police directly found the computer that Du Rongyang usually used. He found a hidden folder in it, and the contents made the woman completely despair. In her eyes, although her husband was a little selfish, he was still decent. He was also a university professor and came from a scholarly family. She didn't expect him to do such a thing. Even if it was murder and arson, she could accept it. However, she couldn't accept this kind of betrayal. Moreover, Du Rongyang's betrayal wasn't because of the seduction of the female students, but because he threatened them. Seeing those things, the woman immediately took her son back to her mother's house. Naturally, the divorce was set. With these photos, it would be easy for the school to find the victims. However, they didn't make a big fuss about it. Although the girls were a little embarrassed and scared when others found out about it, those things would definitely not be leaked out now. They would also not be threatened by Du Rongyang anymore, so they could breathe a sigh of relief. Du Rongyang was injured and detained by the police. The only person who came to cause trouble was Ju Meijuan's mother. However, it was useless. The Ju family did have some power, but Father Ju was still a person with a bottom line. After sending people to inquire and finding out that Du Rongyang had broken the law, he was instantly speechless. He didn't even let his wife interfere anymore. In the hospital, when Du Rongyang was awake, he felt that his body was still in pain. When he opened his eyes, he saw the disgusted and sympathetic eyes of the people around him. Their eyes seemed to be faintly looking at his lower body. He thought carefully and instantly fell into an ice cellar. He was completely crippled. Jing Yun Zhao had used a lot of strength in that kick, and he had even aimed it before kicking. Even with modern medical technology, it was impossible for him to recover. Did he still want to flirt like a man? Of course not. Chapter 829. Du Rongyang hated Jing Yunzhao to the core. When Mother Ju came crying to visit, he scolded Jing Yunzhao harshly with a ferocious face. Mother Ju couldn't react in time. She only had one brother in her family. In her impression, her brother was a gentle and refined man. He had been very obedient since he was young. When the police said that he had molested students, she didn't believe it at all and even found a lawyer. However, the more she researched her brother's case, the more she realized that her sister didn't seem to understand Du Rongyang at all. Although she was disappointed, he was still her only family member. She couldn't just leave him alone. Therefore, when she saw how much her brother hated Jing Yunzhao, she was also furious. Her daughter was expelled because of Jing Yunzhao, and her brother's future was ruined because of her. This little girl was her nemesis. However, she was just an ordinary woman. She couldn't get any benefits from being Mrs. Ju. The Ju family's finances weren't in her hands, and she had no power behind her. She couldn't rely on her husband for help. She could only curse in her heart. She couldn't do anything to Jing Yunzhao. At the same time, there were also rumors circulating within the school. Some said that Du Rongyang had offended Jing Yunzhao and was thus expelled by Professor Mo. Others said that Du Rongyang originally wanted to bring Jing Yunzhao to the morgue to give her a warning, but in the end, he ended up scaring himself. Of course, there were also people who said that he had done many indecent things in private and was found out, and now he was sent to prison. However, no matter what kind of rumors it was, no one could prove it. There were so many teachers in University A, and the expulsion of one had no effect on the students. At most, it would be a topic of conversation for 2 days after dinner. It didn't take long for the dust to settle. The students had even forgotten about Du Rongyang's existence. The girls who had been bullied by Du Rongyang were finally relieved. Jing Yunjiao didn't know their identities, so he wasn't curious about them. During the weekend, Jing Yunjiao was preparing to go out again. Hu Tianxian saw her packing up and immediately asked, "Are you going on a date again?" Jing Yunjiao shook her head. "A friend is coming to Jingju. I want to meet him," Jing Yunjiao said. A few days ago, Pak Yuan had called her and said that he was coming to Jingju to discuss business. He also wanted to report to her about the company's situation. Not only did she want to meet Pak Yuan, she also wanted to meet Hai Qing and the others tomorrow. She had already planned her schedule. However, when it came to dates, Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but blush. Ever since she confirmed her relationship with Li Xiaoyun, it had already been a while, but the two of them had basically never met. Li Xiaoyun seemed to be going through a simulation trial recently, so he was very busy every day. Every time she called him, she could hear the orderly sounds of training and gunshots from his side, as if he was very tired. "The longer I know you, the more mysterious you seem." Hu Tianxian raised her eyebrows and smiled. She handed her a card and said, "If you need to find a Western restaurant, you can go here. You can use my card to get special treatment. Oh, and this. If your friends want to buy jewelry or other things, you can come to our Hu family's store. With my introduction, you can get a lot of discounts." These stores cost a lot. When they first met, she couldn't tell Jing Yunjiao's background, so she didn't want to give her anything. But now, she didn't need to think so much. Jing Yunjiao didn't lack money. The two shiny cards looked very unique. Jing Yunjiao didn't reject her kindness and kept them. She had a lot of VIP cards in her bag, including the ones she had in Serene City. It was a thick stack, but she didn't use many of them. Jing Yunjiao packed up and went to the city. Chapter 830. Pak Yuan drove his own car, so she didn't need to go to the station to welcome him. The two of them agreed to meet at a landmark building in the capital. When Jing Yunjiao arrived, she found Pak Yuan's car already parked there. This car was a benefit given by Jing Yunjiao. Pak Yuan and Xiong Jin each had one. Besides them, the other executives of the company also received a lot of bonuses. Jing Yunjiao walked towards the car. At the same time, the car door opened and Pak Yuan came out in casual clothes. However, he didn't look at her. Instead, he went to the side and opened another car door. "There's someone else." Jing Yunjiao froze for a moment. In the next second, a somewhat old face appeared in front of Jing Yunjiao. Suddenly, the corners of Jing Yunjiao's mouth rose. She was excited and quickly walked over. "Elder Shu." Her voice was sweet and full of surprise. Pak Yuan clearly said that he would come alone. If she had known that Elder Shu would come along, she would have booked a hotel according to the old man's preferences so that he could rest. Old man Shu glanced at Jing Yunjiao, his hand holding onto a crutch that wasn't very useful. He lightly snorted and said, "Brat, come and support me. Don't you know how to respect the old and cherish the young?" "Hey." Jing Yunjiao was happy and quickly went forward. She watched as the old man threw the walking stick back into the car with satisfaction. With the old man's arrival, she felt that the capital had a bit of a home. "Elder Shu, didn't you say that you didn't want to go back to the capital?" "Right. Where's Uncle Xing Yuan? Didn't he come with you?" Jing Yunjiao was happy and couldn't help but ask. The old man glared at her. "I didn't want to come before, but now I do. As for Xing Yuan, he needs to wrap up some pharmaceutical business in the county. When he's done, he'll come." Old man Shu's words stunned Jing Yunjiao. 2 seconds later, he asked in surprise, "Old man Shu, are you saying that you want to settle down in capital city?" When she left the county town, She hoped that the old man would return to the capital with her. On the one hand, she really treated the old man as her family. On the other hand, she felt that Elder Shu's sons were all in the capital, so they should be reunited. However, Elder Shu did not agree at all. Although she tolerated Gan Song by being her god-grandfather, if she had to talk about closeness and distance, Elder Shu was more like her family. Because old man Gan originally had a house full of children and grandchildren, there was no lack of younger generation to please him. Moreover, he more or less sympathized with her and was also somewhat courteous. But Elder Shu was different. Although he never said anything nice to her, he treated her extremely well. At this moment, seeing her so happy, Elder Shu's expression became much more relaxed. Yun Zhao, during the time you weren't in the county town, Elder Shu was very bored. According to your wishes, I delivered wine every week. Every time Elder Shu saw me, he would ask about your current situation. So, I couldn't help it. Pak Yuan couldn't help but laugh. He could see that this old man Shu's temper could only be controlled by Jing Yunjiao. Old man Shu loved wine, and Jing Yunjiao was afraid that he would drink too much, so he had him deliver wine regularly. This could also control the amount he drank. When the old man saw him, he didn't have a good temper and was very fierce. In the beginning, he even threw away the wine he delivered, making him not know what to do. After the old man's disciple reminded him, he realized that the old man was worried about Jing Yunjiao. So he patiently told him a few things about Jing Yunjiao. Only then did the old man's temper improve a bit. However, this old man was also very stubborn. Jing Yunjiao clearly called him, but he was very serious every time. He didn't talk much with her and only asked her to seriously study and study. He was really stubborn, and he also wanted to save face. Chapter 831. Jing Yunjiao already knew about the old man's temper, so he wasn't surprised. At this time, Elder Shu glared at Pak Yuan and said fiercely, "You talk too much." However, although he looked a little fierce, there was no disgust in his expression. "Elder Shu, you didn't eat on the way here, right? Do you want to eat something nearby?" Jing Yunjiao asked. "I do want to eat, but I still want to eat what you cook. Now, let's go to the shopping mall and buy some furniture first." Elder Shu's tone was gentler as he pointed at the building in front of him. "Furniture? That house?" Jing Yunjiao was slightly startled. Elder Shu continued, "There's an old house, and it's convenient to use it to make medicine. It's just that the furniture inside isn't very good. Before we came, I had people throw it all away and replace everything with new ones." Pak Yuan raised his eyebrows and smiled at the side with a strange expression. Jing Yunjiao, the big boss, had asked him to take care of Elder Shu, so of course he would follow her orders. In fact, during this period of time, he had already listened to Elder Shu's wishes and made a trip to the capital. It was just that Elder Shu didn't allow him to tell Jing Yunjiao, so he didn't say anything. The reason he came here was very simple, it was to help Elder Shu tidy up the house. This house wasn't an old house, and the furniture in the house was definitely not bad. The quality of the furniture was about 70 to 80% new, but it looked a little dull. At a glance, one could tell that it was an old man's house. Elder Shu's ultimate goal was to let Jing Yunjiao choose the style he liked. However, Pak Yuan didn't say anything at this time, and Jing Yunjiao didn't think too much about it. He helped Elder Shu into the shopping mall. The shopping mall was full of things. Jing Yunjiao didn't know what to buy, so he asked, "Elder Shu, how big is the house? You only need furniture, right? There's nothing except for the kitchen. You can do as you see fit. Pick some bright colors and get someone to install a bigger bookcase for you," Elder Shu said. Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. It looked like they were going to make a big purchase. The purpose of Pak Yuan's visit was to negotiate the contract with the merchants. Jing Yunjiao did not keep him. He would leave the other matters until the old man had finished choosing the items. Anyway, he was not in a hurry. An old man and a young man wandered around the huge shopping mall. According to the old man, the house used to be used for making medicine. The yard was very big, and the house had 3 floors. The area of each room was not small, and it could fit a lot of things. Therefore, Jing Yunjiao did not hesitate to buy things. Elder Shu, what do you think of this rocking chair? The wood is soft, so it should be more comfortable to lie on, Jing Yunjiao said. Old man Shu nodded. Not bad. Book it. The pergola next to it is good too. Put some flowers and plants there. Elder Shu, I don't believe what you're saying. I'm afraid the flowers and plants in the courtyard will be dried by you to make medicine soon, right? Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but smile. What he said was the truth. There wasn't a single living thing in the courtyard before. Stupid girl. Old man Shu glared at her and said, You're a girl. You should see more flowers and plants. How long has it been since we last met? You're covered in tacky clothes. Did your male classmate give you such ugly clothes? Jing Yunjiao looked down at the dress on her body and was a little speechless. Li Xiaoyun chose it. Jing Yunjiao said sullenly. The old man's face twitched. He bought it. That's good. Jing Yunjiao suddenly blushed with shame. Elder Shu, aren't you a little too biased? Why did you immediately think it was okay when you heard that he bought it? In the past, when Li Xiaoyun went to see the old man and the young man also glared at each other. Their reaction now was a little strange. Chapter 832. Old man Shu pursed his lips and harumphed. Jing Yunjiao was no longer a child. Thinking back to when his daughter was her age, she already had someone she liked. He was afraid that this dress was chosen by some guy to please her, so he opened his mouth to test her. However, compared to other people, Li Xiaoyun was still alright. At least he knew the Li family very well. Although Li Xiaoyun was a little scheming, his temperament was similar to Li Junwei's. Whether it was to the country or to his family, he was still loyal. Moreover, with the Li family's status, he was barely worthy of this brat. Of course, to be honest, this dress was indeed not bad. It was of good quality and complemented her skin tone. Paired with a short jacket, it looked youthful and matched her age. With that kid from the Li family around, I don't have to worry about you. Elder Shu said faintly and paused. You didn't seem like the type to accept gifts in the past. Jing Yunjiao was stunned and a little embarrassed. After that day, she originally wanted to transfer the money to Li Xiaoyun's account, but she didn't succeed. In the end, she could only accept this dress. Elder Shu, Li Xiaoyun, and I are now boyfriend and girlfriend. Jing Yunjiao didn't hide it and said. If it were someone else, she might have waited for the dust to settle first. After all, her relationship with Li Xiaoyun had just been established, and the future was still uncertain. However, it was Elder Shu in front of her. He had always had good eyesight and was smart, so he could give her some advice. However, Elder Shu wasn't surprised at all. That kid from the Li family is not bad. He has always been aloof and indifferent, but in the past 2 years, he has been helping you everywhere. For you, he often comes to my courtyard to eat. It's good that he can tolerate it until now, Elder Shu replied directly. Jing Yunjiao was stunned for a moment. You saw through it long ago? You little girl, you're so stupid. Elder Shu shook his head. I know a little about Li Xiaoyun's reputation in the past. He is a career-oriented person. I heard that he spends at least 300 days in a year in the army. However, after meeting you, why did he stay in that small county? His grandfather and I can be considered acquaintances, but we're not close friends. However, he still visits him every few days. It's not because he's filial. It's obvious that he has an ulterior motive. Only you can't see it. Jing Yunjiao opened her mouth, her face full of shock. At that time, she did think that Elder Shu and the Li family were friends. She was a little embarrassed, but after a few seconds, there was a faint smile on her lips. Elder Shu, do you know the Li family's situation? I went to see Grandpa Li a few days ago. He treated me very well and was easy to talk to, Jing Yunjiao said calmly. The Li family has that damn old man watching over them. The others can't do anything. Even without Li Junwei, with Li Xiaoyun, you won't be at a disadvantage. When that kid is ruthless, he will definitely not recognize his family. Silly girl, don't worry. However, you're still young now. Don't think about those messy things. Feelings can be cultivated, but you can't act recklessly, Elder Shu said. As he spoke, Elder Shu looked at Jing Yunjiao. His face darkened, and there was a trace of worry in his eyes. This face was more and more similar to his daughter's. Especially when they talked about the man they liked, their eyes were almost exactly the same. The difference was that his daughter placed love above all else. For Li Tianyi, she was willing to risk everything and bet everything on that man. This girl, on the other hand, was different. She was much more rational and defensive. However, this kind of personality was probably better. Chapter 833. Old Man Shu sighed. It wasn't that he didn't suspect Jing Yunjiao's identity. Earlier on, he had also thought of letting her and Li Tianyi do a DNA test, but after thinking about it for so long, he still decided against it. In the past 18 years, Li Tianyi had never once mentioned that he had a daughter. He was part of the Li family, so he had a reason to purposely hide it. However, Jing Yunjiao was an orphan with no parents. If they were really father and daughter, then what about his daughter? Where was Xianlan? Old Master Shu's footsteps became heavier. After a while, he returned to his thoughts and continued shopping. Jing Yunjiao bought a lot of large items, which were delivered by them all. The delivery speed was also very fast. Not long after the two returned, the items were moved in one by one. Old Master Shu's residence was not remote, but it was located on a high ground. It looked like it was halfway up the mountain. There were some developed villas nearby. The scenery was excellent and the air was fresh. Although it was not as big as the manor, the courtyard was very spacious. The price was definitely not low. The layout of the house was also very good. Old Master Shu lived on the first floor, which was convenient for him to come and go. Xu Xingyuan's room was next to it, which was easy to take care of. The third floor was reserved for her. One of the rooms was filled with bookcases, which looked like a library. The second floor was reserved for guests. After hiring a professional to clean up, everything was ready in the afternoon. Jing Yunjiao showed her talent and cooked a meal. At the dining table, Jing Yunjiao thought for a while and asked, "Old Master Shu, since you're back in Capital City, do you want to tell the uncles?" The uncles were naturally referring to Old Master Shu's son. "There's no need." Old Man Shu glared fiercely at Jing Yunjiao before continuing, "I'll leave this room for you. You can come and stay here when you're free. You can't forget the things I taught you. Also, I found a clinic for you. From next week onwards, you'll have to go there for a few days every month to learn." Jing Yunjiao's eyes lit up. "Where is the clinic?" "It's not far from here. It's called Crane Hall. It's right next to Capital City's largest hospital. This Crane Hall has some history and has many customers. I told the owner of the clinic to let you take a look at some difficult diseases. You can relax a little when you're free," Old Master Shu said. Upon hearing Immortal Crane Hall, Jing Yunjiao was dumbfounded. If she remembered correctly, the clinic she went to with Professor Mo was there, and the owner of the red-crowned crane hall was an old woman called Yu Fu. Not only was she eccentric, she even wanted her to worship the ancestors of the red-crowned crane hall. "Elder Shu, I've been to that immortal crane hall once. That old lady Yu Fu seemed to want me to offer incense to those memorial tablets for her." "What's the reason?" Jing Yunjiao asked directly. Hearing this, Elder Shu frowned. "Why did you go there?" "It's like this. I know a teacher in a university. His surname is Mo. He's not feeling well, so I went with him. I didn't stay for long, but it was really strange." Jing Yunjiao explained briefly. When Elder Shu heard the word Mo, he knew what was going on. "I know, you don't have to worry about it. This Yu Fu is already old and very stubborn. When she was young, she was the daughter of a servant by a rich young lady's side. She learned medical skills from that young lady, but that young lady has died for decades, and no one pays respects to her. Coincidentally, you have the same surname as her, so she wants you to be that young lady's descendant to put on an act. I'll tell Yu Fu later, you just need to treat illnesses and save people." However, this Mo Zhengyang has a good eye to take you in as a student. Elder Shu nodded. When he mentioned Mo Zhengyang, he was more or less contemptuous. Chapter 834. After hearing Elder Shu's words, Jing Yunjiao's doubts were solved. So it was because of her surname. I understand. I'll report to Crane Hall when I have time. Jing Yunjiao nodded. After coming to the capital, she had fewer opportunities to show off her medical skills. She had wanted to find a clinic to work part-time, but she hadn't found a suitable one. Also, if it weren't for old lady Yu Fu's request to burn incense, she would have wanted to work at Crane Hall. After all, it was a proper place with more patients. Elder Shu nodded with satisfaction and said, although that old man Mo Zhengyang is a little arrogant, he does have some skills in Chinese studies. Learn from him, but don't learn from his bad temper. You'll only harm yourself and others. Jing Yunjiao hurriedly nodded. Speaking of which, Professor Mo was quite pitiful. He was already so old, but he still had to bear the emotional debt from decades ago. Not only was he scolded by old lady Yu Fu into silence, but now he was being disliked by Elder Shu. The two sat down and ate quietly. After dinner, Elder Shu inspected her again. He asked her about the contents of the books he gave her before, and only let her go after seeing that she could answer all the questions fluently. Jing Yunjiao didn't stay overnight that night. After Pak Yuan finished his work, he stayed with Elder Shu for the night. The villa didn't seem so empty and deserted. However, at that moment, in the beauty salon that Jing Yunjiao invested in, Shen Tong looked at the woman beside her with a puzzled expression. Big sister, were you purposely avoiding someone when we were in the mall? Do you know Jing Yunjiao? Shen Tong asked. The woman's body trembled. I don't know him. I just don't feel well, is that so? Shen Tong was still a little suspicious. Because of Jing Yunjiao, her beauty salon had been expanded and renovated for a while. Because she needed to buy some furniture, she went with her sister. After walking around the mall, she saw Jing Yunjiao and an old man. Just as she was about to greet them, her sister's face suddenly turned pale. She said that she felt dizzy and uncomfortable, and dragged her back. She had a feeling that her sister knew Jing Yunjiao, but she wasn't sure. After all, Jing Yunjiao wasn't from the capital. He came to the capital to study, and her sister, the wife of the Shu family, rarely went out and rarely socialized. Logically speaking, the two shouldn't have any interactions. The Jing Yunjiao you just mentioned. Is he the one who funded you to expand your beauty salon? Mrs. S. face was still pale, but she still asked. Shen Tong nodded. Actually, I've only met her once, but she and the Hua family's daughter are classmates or roommates. Didn't I meet a crazy fan last time? She was the one who helped me back then. She's a very unique girl. Mrs. Shu clenched her fists. After meeting the girl that day, she did some research and found out that she was an orphan. She also knew that her surname was Jing. At that moment, she knew that she couldn't let anyone from the Shu family meet her. But why was her father-in-law already with Jing Yunjiao? Did that mean that he knew? She panicked and hurriedly shook her head. That's impossible. Back then, other than that couple, she was the only one who knew that Shu Xianlan had a child. Moreover, that child obviously couldn't be alive. Even if it was alive, her father-in-law wouldn't have thought of that girl's relationship with the Shu family. He probably only knew that Jing Yunjiao because she and Shu Xianlan looked alike. Mrs. Shu's expression was complicated. Beside her, Shen Tong was even more confused. Big sister, what's wrong? Shen Tong quickly asked. Nothing, nothing. Oh right, Tong, where did Jing Yunjiao get so much money? Have you ever asked? Chapter 835. Shen Tong shook her head. She felt that something was wrong when she saw her sister's concerned expression, but she didn't think too much about it. I'm not sure. Jing Yunjiao seems very mysterious, and this is her private matter. Although we're business partners now, we're not very familiar with each other, but, big sister, if you're interested in her, I can try to introduce you to her. She looks cold, but she's actually a very lovable little girl. Shentong continued. Mrs. Shu quickly shook her head. No need. I'm already so old. Why would I want to know such a young child? Big sister, you're too modest. You're still a great beauty. Otherwise, brother-in-law wouldn't have doted on you so much all these years. Speaking of which, I haven't seen brother-in-law for many years. How is he now? You said that the old man of the Shu family ran away from home. Hasn't he returned yet? Shentong asked. At the mention of elder Shu, Mrs. Shu's face darkened. Your brother-in-law is doing well. As for my father-in-law, who knows? Maybe he'll get over it one day. He had already arrived in the capital, but he didn't inform the Shu family's descendants. She didn't know what the old man was thinking. However, the old man had said before that he was going to retire in a small county in Yang province. Why did he suddenly change his mind? Was it because of Jing Yunjiao? Big sister, although I've never met elder Shu, I feel that he's quite pitiful when he loses his daughter. I've heard that your sister-in-law was very beautiful and kind. She was very talented, but it's a pity that beautiful women don't have an easy life. That's why they say that women will always lose to their own infatuation. It's quite nice to be like me, who has nothing to worry about other than my son. Shentong couldn't help but sigh. Xu Xianlan and Li Tianyi were once a pair of golden boy and jade girl. Unfortunately, the two families, who were originally of the same breath and branch, became enemies for some reason. Xu Xianlan and Li Tianyi could only elope and live their own lives. However, they originally thought that they would only envy mandarin ducks and not immortals. Unexpectedly, that beautiful love story didn't last long at all. Of the two main characters, one became disabled and locked himself in his home all day without saying a word. The other went missing for many years and was probably dead. Shentong sighed faintly. She wasn't clear about what had happened back then. She had only heard about it from her elder sister. Mrs. Shu's skin had been taken care of, so she left after a while. She seemed to have something on her mind. After thinking about it, Shentong still felt that it was inappropriate for him to not greet Jing Yunjiao when he saw him today, so he specially called Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao returned to the dormitory and was surprised to see Shentong's number. Hello, Aunt Tong. Is there anything I can help you with at the beauty salon? Jing Yunjiao asked politely. No. It's going well here. I have some personal matters to discuss with you. Shentong paused for a moment before continuing. I saw you at the mall during the day. I wanted to greet you and treat you to a meal, but my sister wasn't feeling well, so I didn't go up to you. I wanted to ask if you need any help. I've been going to the mall for the past 2 years, so I'm very familiar with the brands and quality of some things. Shentong's voice was polite and didn't mean to treat her as a junior. When Jing Yunjiao heard this, his brows relaxed and he said, I've already bought the things, but now that Aunt Tong mentioned it, I remember that there is something I need your help with, but it has nothing to do with buying things. Chapter 836. Jing Yunjiao also suddenly remembered that Aunt Tong used to have a lot of status in the entertainment industry. Even though so many years had passed, according to Hua Tianxian, Aunt Tong still had a lot of connections. Nowadays, there were many directors and big shots who wanted to invite her to come out and act in movies, but they were all rejected by her. Tomorrow, she had arranged to meet with Hai Qing and a few others. Hai Qing was studying acting. Recently, she had found opportunities to learn from some crews and even took on a small role. Tomorrow, she had saved a lot of time. If she could pave the way for Hai Qing and get to know more people, it would be a good thing. Of course, even if Shentong couldn't help Hai Qing, her beauty salon could still give Hai Qing some benefits. If she wanted to be an artist, she had to have a good reputation. However, Shentong took it seriously. She quickly asked, Miss Jing, if you need anything, just tell me. If I can help, I will definitely help. I just want to introduce someone to Aunt Tong. You can choose according to your affinity. Jing Yunjiao didn't want to force Shentong to help. As for Xiao Haiqing, she valued her a lot. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was her family and confidant. When she knew that she wanted to be an artist, she wanted her to be the spokesperson for Yuling Wines. However, Letting someone without any works or influence endorse a product rashly was harmful to both Yu Ling Wines and Xiao Haiqing. Therefore, she had been waiting. Until now, Yu Ling Wines hadn't signed an endorsement contract with any artist. Pak Yuan had mentioned it to her more than once, but she suppressed it. She was waiting for the day when Xiao Haiqing became famous. Moreover, Yu Ling Wines would become more famous by then, which would be good for both parties. With Jing Yunjiao's simple explanation, Shen Tong already had an idea in her heart. She wanted her to look at fate, so she definitely wanted to become an artist and wanted her to help pave the way. Many people had approached her over the years, but she rejected them all. If Jing Yunjiao forced her, she didn't know how to open her mouth. She didn't reject his attitude. She wasn't a stingy person. If the person Jing Yunjiao introduced had potential and good character, she didn't mind helping. No problem. I'm also curious about what kind of person Miss Jing will introduce to me. Shen Tong smiled. Then, she thought of her sister and said, "By the way, Miss Jing, do you know a woman named Shen Shi? She's about 45 or 46 years old, but she's a rich lady. She looks quite young and has a good temperament." "I don't know him," Jing Yunjiao said. "Really? Then I must be overthinking it. My sister and I saw you together, and she didn't look too good. I thought you two knew each other and had some misunderstanding, so I was shocked." Shen Tong paused halfway through her sentence. If Big Sister didn't know Jing Yunjiao, would she know the old man next to her? "Miss Jing, who was the old man you went shopping with during the day?" "I'm sorry, I said too much, but because it's related to my sister." Shen Tong's voice was a little hurried and troubled. She was really worried because Shen Shi's reaction at the time was too big. She felt a little scared, and also a little resentful. It felt strange. Jing Yunjiao thought about it and felt that there was no need to hide it, so he said directly, "He's an elder of mine. His surname is Xu, and his full name is Xu Jingji." After he said that, the other end of the phone became abnormally quiet. Jing Yunjiao could hear Shen Tong's heavy breathing. It seemed like she had a big reaction. Chapter 837. Aunt Tong? Jing Yunjiao called out in surprise. On the other end of the phone, Shen Tong was confused. She couldn't figure it out. Although she had never met Xu Jingji, she had heard of him. He was the biological father of her sister's husband, a master pharmacist. But if he was her sister's father-in-law, why didn't she approach him? Why did she pretend to be unwell? She was certain that her sister had seen Elder Xu at that time, and she had suddenly said that she felt dizzy the moment she saw him. If it had been any other time, she would have definitely believed that her sister was not feeling well, but for some reason, she had a very strong intuition in her heart at that time. She was almost certain that her sister's real purpose was to hide from someone. But why would she hide from an old man who had been recuperating in another city all year round? Also, when she was talking to her sister, she mentioned Elder Xu, but her sister didn't tell her the truth. "Auntie Tong?" Just as her thoughts were running wild, Jing Yunjiao called out again. "Oh, it's nothing. I just thought of something strange." Shen Tong laughed dryly. Jing Yunjiao was stunned. Is it because of Elder Xu? Could it be that Elder Xu has a grudge with Auntie Shen Shi? "No, I've never seen Elder Xu, but I've heard of him. So I was surprised to know that you knew him." "Shen Shi is my sister. She's now part of the Xu family. She's the wife of Elder Xu's eldest son," Shen Tong explained. Elder Xu's daughter-in-law? Jingju was so small. She could find someone she knew after asking around. And every time, it was related to Elder Xu. It was a little strange. It was as if everything had been arranged. Previously, she had met Professor Mo and Grandma Yu Fu by coincidence. Later, she found out that she was also close to Elder Xu. Shen Tong had met Shen Tong through Hu Tianxian. She didn't expect Shen Tong's sister to be Elder Xu's daughter-in-law. But Elder Xu didn't want to meet his family now, so Jing Yunjiao said, "Aunt Shen Shi also saw Elder Xu? Aunt Tong, can you tell her that Elder Xu still wants peace and quiet, so he hopes that she won't tell the Xu family about his arrival in the capital for the time being?" Old Master Shu's reluctance to see his children and grandchildren was not an act. Although she also wanted Elder Shu to have children and grandchildren, it was more important for him to be happy. It would not be too late to see him again in the future when he thought things through. Okay. Actually, I don't think Big Sis saw it clearly either. Shentong found an excuse. There was a reason why Elder Shu didn't want to see his children and grandchildren, but it wasn't normal for his sister, a junior, to take the initiative to escape. Jing Yunjiao nodded and exchanged a few more pleasantries before hanging up. Little did he know that Shen Shi and Shen Tong were both absent-minded at the moment. Chapter 838. Jing Yunjiao's body had a hint of medicinal fragrance, which was particularly different. As Xiao Haiqing spoke, her hand gently pinched Jing Yunjiao's waist. "Yunjiao, why aren't you fat?" Jing Yunjiao smiled bitterly and slapped her hand away. "Did you put on makeup?" Jing Yunjiao asked calmly. "It's just light makeup. You don't know, but my classmates dress up every day. They look like two different people with makeup on and without it. Also, if I don't put on makeup, I'm afraid that people will immediately think that I'm scheming and want to be an elegant flower in a field of flowers, so I put on some makeup. Fortunately, you gave me the ointment, so even if I put on makeup, it won't affect my skin," Xiao Haiqing replied with a smile. As the three of them talked, they went to a nearby restaurant and sat down. The place they chose to meet was near Xiao Haiqing's school. It was a university town, and there were many schools nearby. It was very lively, and even Suchu often came here. It was said that there were many talent scouts here, and many celebrities were discovered when they were still in school. Later on, they became famous. "Haiqing, why do I feel that you've lost a lot of weight?" Suchu asked as she drank her fruit juice. "You can tell? If that's the case, there are some results." Xiao Haiqing narrowed her eyes and said, "The competition in this industry is quite fierce, and not everyone can stand out. Although my body was very good before, it was only well proportioned. Tell me the truth." Jing Yunjiao spoke up from the side without much emotion. Xiao Haiqing paused, pursed her lips, and said helplessly, "Okay. It's just that I've been running around a lot lately." She didn't have any fame at the moment. Although she had a pretty face, the entertainment industry didn't lack beauties. She didn't have anyone to rely on in this area, so she could only interact with people and things in this field. Every time she heard that there were people filming, she would think of ways to go and take a look. It would be best if she could make a cameo appearance. Even if it was a dead person or a maid, it didn't matter. She mainly wanted to know what it was like when they were working. After a while, he lost a lot of weight. However, he still learned a lot. After all, there were some differences between what the teacher said and the actual situation. During this period of time, she had met all kinds of directors and actors. Some of them were enthusiastic and motivated, some of them were cold and arrogant, and some of them would bully others. If she wanted to survive, she had to learn how to be smooth and slick. She also knew a lot of people and memorized all of them. Their characteristics and names were imprinted in her mind little by little. Because of Jing Yunjiao, she had learned martial arts, which was very useful. So far, 2 or 3 directors and several crew members had a deep impression of her. Without Xiao Haiqing saying more, Jing Yunjiao knew how hard it was for her. Her eyes were a little dry and red. It was obvious that she did not have enough sleep and insisted on using light makeup to cover it up. Her lie was quite smooth. "Give me your hand and I'll show you." Jing Yunjiao raised his eyebrows in a domineering manner. Xiao Haiqing smiled bitterly. "I really can't hide anything from you." Extending her wrist, Jing Yunjiao checked her pulse. After a while, he let go. "You're a little heaty. When you go back, I'll make you a cup of flower tea. In the future, you can drink a cup at night to ensure quality sleep. As for facial masks, I should be able to make them. Also, have you used up all your face creams? Do you want me to give you some more so that you can give it to others to earn some favors?" Jing Yunjiao asked one after another. Fut Suchu covered her mouth and laughed. "Cousin, you sound like an elder in Haiqing. You're so naggy." Chapter 839. Jing Yunjiao shook his head helplessly. Yunjiao and I are each other's intimate little cotton-padded jackets. What's wrong with nagging? I love it. Xiao Haiqing laughed wildly. Jing Yunjiao had a good foundation. Different types of makeup could make her look pure and innocent, but she could also make her look charming. The light makeup she put on right now was just right. She was beautiful but not greasy. She was highly recognizable. Jing Yunjiao had no doubts about her future path to stardom. After a while, all the dishes were served. Haiqing, do you know Shentong? Jing Yunjiao asked. Back then, she was known as the #1 beauty in the entertainment industry. Not only was she good-looking, but her acting skills were also very good. She played a few very classic roles. Now, I'm cramming on those classic roles every day. I'm also amazed by her. It's a pity that she mysteriously disappeared from the entertainment industry more than 20 years ago. Otherwise, she would be much better than those big sisters in the entertainment industry today, Xiao Haiqing said. Back then, Shentong had won the title of Best Actress from many people at an extremely young age. Her strength was not to be underestimated. Jing Yunjiao nodded. It's good that you know her. Otherwise, it'll be awkward if you don't recognize her. After all, he had introduced Xiao Haiqing to Shentong. If Xiao Haiqing didn't know anything about Shentong, it would be somewhat insincere. Of course, she wasn't asking Haiqing to please Shentong. What she meant was very simple. If Shentong felt that she could help, then she would help. If Shentong didn't like her, then so be it. Haiqing wasn't the type to flatter people. What did you say? Xiao Haiqing was stunned. You can't recognize it. Is it Shentong? Yes, I invested in Shentong's beauty salon, and now we are partners. She's a nice person, so I thought it wouldn't be a loss for you to get to know her. Even if I can't help, I have a share in the beauty salon, so you can get a discount when you go there in the future, Jing Yunjiao replied. Even if it was free, Xiao Haiqing could support herself, so she didn't need to worry too much. Now that Jing Yunjiao said this, Xiao Haiqing was speechless. Her eyes lit up. Yunjiao, you're too fast. How long have you been in the capital? You already know Shentong? Although I know a lot of directors and actors, it took me a lot of effort to get to know them. Comparisons are odious, but I really love you. Her eyes flickered as she was extremely touched. Jing Yunjiao wasn't the type to ask for help from others. If it wasn't for her, Yunjiao, I owe you a lot. How about I give myself to you and we can spend the rest of our lives together? Xiao Haiqing knew that it was useless to say more, so she changed the topic and joked. That won't be necessary, because I already have a boyfriend. Jing Yunjiao's words shocked her. Cough cough. Suchu choked. Chapter 840. Both of them stared at Jing Yunjiao. After a while, Xiao Haiqing asked, "Who is it? Could it be that there's a good guy in your school that you're interested in?" No. Even if there's such a good guy, with your personality, it's impossible for you to be in a relationship with him in such a short time. So after thinking about it, is it young Master Li? Xiao Haiqing asked again. Jing Yunjiao nodded. Xiao Haiqing's face was filled with disappointment. What? I thought there would be someone else. If it was young Master Li, then it wouldn't be a surprise. After all, she already knew that young Master Li treated Jing Yunjiao differently. It was just that they were still young back then, so there were some things that she wasn't too sure about. I think it's a pity. I want my cousin to become my cousin-in-law. Then we'll be a real family. Suchu had a bitter expression. The corner of Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. She and Gan Jinchen and Tang Zihua were only friends. Moreover, the two of them didn't have any other intentions towards her, so how could they possibly develop their relationship further? Besides, maybe it was because she had lived to the age of 20 in her past life, but in her eyes, Gan Jinchen and Tang Zihua were more like little younger brothers. She couldn't bring herself to do it. Yunjiao, how does young Master Li treat you? Abstinent men are very scary. Xiao Haiqing's tone was strange as she said this with a flirtatious expression. Jing Yunjiao almost choked when she heard this. She quickly picked up some food and put it in front of Xiao Haiqing. Can't food stop you from talking? I'm just asking. Xiao Haiqing smiled with her eyes squinted. But then again, you don't look like you're in love at all. You're not like one of my roommates. She's so poor, but she only eats 1 meal a day to buy her boyfriend's favorite game equipment. She calls it a diet. Recently, her boyfriend said that he wanted to buy tickets to some Big Shots concert. That girl started saving money like crazy and ended up with a huge debt. Yesterday, I didn't lend her any money and kindly reminded her. Who knew that she would complain about it? Yunjiao, luckily you're still rational. Xiao Haiqing sighed. She really couldn't understand the crazy look of a woman in love. If a woman forgets herself for a man, then what's the difference between her existence and a parasite? Just like her mother who had passed away. She lived her whole life and lived frugally, never giving her father any trouble. She used to think that it was love, but now she knew that it was self-destruction. If one day she met the other half of her life, she, Xiao Haiqing, would only be a bad woman. She would protect her own heart, even if she was a little selfish. Isn't that roommate of yours too stupid? But for some people, if you can't persuade them, then don't poke your nose into other people's business. Otherwise, they'll think you're up to no good. Suchu thought about it and said, although a woman who was obsessed with a scumbag was pitiful, how could an outsider care? Isn't that so? Xiao Haiqing nodded in agreement. As she spoke, she caught a glimpse of a man and woman nearby. The corner of her mouth twitched. You really can't talk bad about others behind their backs. Look, that's the scumbag. But that girl isn't my roommate. She should be the other stupid fish he caught, right? Following Xiao Haiqing's gaze, they saw a man and a woman feeding each other intimately at a table on the other side of the aisle. The scene was particularly sweet. Don't look, don't care about gossip. Jing Yunjiao shook his head. Just as he finished speaking, the three suddenly heard the sound of a cup falling to the ground. They turned their heads and saw that the boy's face was covered with juice. The girl opposite him was stunned. Before she could react, she was splashed with leftovers. Next to her, an aggressive girl rushed out, her face full of resentment. Chapter 841. The girl who committed the assault looked like a tomboy. She had short hair and her face was sallow. She looked malnourished and did not know how to dress. Her looks were passable, but she did not have a good temperament. The girl who sat there in a sorry state looked delicate. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and she looked like a helpless little bird. She looked so helpless in her panic that one could not help but want to protect her. Are you crazy? The boy stood up immediately and hurriedly helped the long-haired girl clean the dirt on her body. Vixen, you told me that you were going to eat with your roommate today. She must have seduced you. The girl who committed the assault looked aggrieved and angry. Jing Yunjiao raised his eyebrows. What's your roommate's name? Dingyu, what's wrong? Xiao Haiqing was puzzled. She doesn't look too good. Her footsteps are weak and her eyes are white. She's also a little dazed. Now that she's so agitated, it won't be long before she faints with a plop. Jing Yunjiao shrugged and leaned back. That's troublesome. Why don't we call an ambulance for her? Yunjiao, don't do anything. It's troublesome, Xiao Haiqing said. It was not that she was heartless, but some people did not seem to be worth helping. She had tried to persuade Dingyu yesterday, but this woman was simply going against the whole world for a man. It was as if everyone who said that the boy was not a good person was a bad person. Not only that, but now, for example, she was aggressive and seemed to be quite powerful, but the boy's confidence was weak. He looked as if he had been wronged and vented his anger on the girl beside him. Obviously, if the girl was scared away by her, she might even try to change the scumbag's mind. Jing Yunjiao nodded and didn't have any intention of interfering. Even her roommate was disappointed in her. Why should an outsider like her meddle in other people's business? Xiao Haiqing trusted Jing Yunjiao very much. She immediately called for an ambulance. At this moment, the boy supported the long-haired girl and angrily rebuked, "It has nothing to do with her. Ding Yu, you're the one who misunderstood me. I never wanted to be with you. We're just friends. I didn't expect you to be so narcissistic. Why don't you take a look at yourself? You're so fierce and you even studied acting. Can you enter the entertainment industry with your image? Don't you know how people laugh at you? When Ding Yu heard this, her mind buzzed, and she felt as if the line of sight in front of her was gathering. Suddenly, he rushed up and pulled at the girl. The girl was already stunned. She looked like she didn't know what was going on at all. For a moment, she was incomparably flustered. However, it didn't last long before a bang sound was heard. Ding Yu fainted on the ground. Jing Yunjiao raised his eyebrows but did not step forward. After a while, the ambulance had already arrived. The people next to them were even a little stunned. After all, the ambulance seemed to have come too timely. It was as if it had been waiting there in advance. For Jing Yunjiao, this was just a small episode. The three of them were still eating. After filling their stomachs, they were ready to get up and leave. However, when the boy saw that he couldn't coax the long-haired girl, he suddenly ran in front of Xiao Haiqing and pointed at her. It was you who contacted Ding Yu, right? I know you. You're her roommate. Are you happy to see us like this? It has nothing to do with me. Xiao Haiqing's face instantly darkened. Do you think I'll believe it? If it's not you, who else could it be? She fainted now. No, most of the responsibility is on you. If you didn't snitch, she wouldn't have to go to the hospital, the boy said again. Chapter 842. Xiao Haiqing snorted and looked dangerous. Even Suchu's face showed a trace of anger. Although Suchu's martial arts are not as good as Xiao Haiqing's, after all, Jing Yunjiao personally taught her. It's not a problem to deal with 5 or 6 big men. Moreover, with the influence of Jing Yunjiao over the years, Suchu has some bad temper, but it is hidden by the appearance of this lady. Jing Yunjiao stood behind. Suchu and Xiao Haiqing looked at her and signaled to each other. Their eyes were full of provocative smiles. Jing Yunjiao looked at it and took a step back obediently. The next second, I saw that the two almost synchronized with a kick and swept it directly. Suddenly, everyone was shocked. The boy suddenly staggered back a few steps and leaned against the wall. Then he covered his chest and coughed twice. He was very angry and rushed over immediately. If he didn't take the initiative to come forward, it would have been fine. Now he rushed up with a fierce face. Xiao Haiqing and Suchu immediately fought back. They divided their work and pulled his pair of arms. They turned them around fiercely, making a click sound. Then they punched him again in the back of his waist. The whole person was directly lying on the ground and howling. Well, look at your dress now. I thought you had forgotten what you had learned. Xiao Haiqing clapped his hands and gave a thumbs up to Suchu. Suchu's mouth was up, her face was slightly red, but she was a little excited. I've been learning for so long, but there are few opportunities to fight. It's rare to have a chance. You have to rob me. Suchu has a harmless face. There are 2 small dimples on her face. She smiles quietly and sweetly. I'm afraid no one can think that she will be so rude when she starts. Let's go. Jing Yunjiao came forward and said. When the two heard this, they were as obedient as cats and left side by side. The boy on the ground struggled to get up with his hands on his waist. His nose was bleeding. At this moment, the long-haired girl suddenly appeared in front of her and slapped her. The sound of the slap was crisp and clear. When the surrounding people saw this, they all had expressions of schadenfreude. However, after this fight, Suchu and Xiao Haiqing's moods were much better. They had a bit of a heroine's aura. Jing Yunjiao has never been to this university town. The two took her to walk around. 2 hours later, they left for the beauty salon. So this Rouge Emperor is opened by Shentong. No wonder. I've heard people mention it several times. It's said that the cost is very high, and the reception is for people with VIP cards. Xiao Haiqing exclaimed. The decorations were extremely beautiful and gave off a comfortable and tranquil feeling. Jing Yunjiao directly led the two to Shentong's room. Shentong seemed to have been waiting for a long time. When she saw Jing Yunjiao, she immediately stood up. Miss Jing, are these your friends? Chapter 843. Jing Yunjiao looked at her suspiciously. Where did you buy the spice? I didn't buy it. Didn't I mention it on the phone yesterday? My sister is Elder Shu's daughter-in-law. The Shu family has countless medical books. She's been married for so many years, so she must have been influenced by them. She likes to mess around with these things. She gave me this spice. Oh right, she heard that I had guests coming this morning, so she sent someone to give me a bottle of flower wine. She said it was a treasure she found in the cellar of her house. It's not high in alcohol content and can beautify the skin. I was going to let you try it. After Shentong finished speaking, she took out an exquisite bottle from the cabinet next to her. It was covered in pink flowers, and the faint fragrance could be smelled even before the bottle was opened. Jing Yunjiao's frown deepened. There were some desserts on the small table. After Shentong poured 3 glasses of wine, she poured herself a glass of water. Aren't you going to drink? Jing Yunjiao asked, his gaze cold. Me? I haven't drunk in over 20 years. Drinking messes up things, so I've never touched a drop of alcohol. Every time I socialize with others, I'll pretend to drink, but those who know me know my habit. This wine is for you. I'm sorry, but I can't drink with you. Shentong hurriedly explained. Jing Yunjiao's eyes flashed. Aunt Tong, how long have you been using this spice? Shentong froze for a moment and thought for a moment. It's been a while. The last time you came, didn't a fan suddenly appear? Because of that fan, I haven't been able to sleep well for a few days, so my sister specially gave me this. Even though my chest still feels stuffy and uncomfortable, at least I can sleep well at night. Shentong's expression was normal, and Jing Yunjiao didn't see anything wrong with it. If this was a lie, then her skills were too profound. Even if she was an actress, she shouldn't be able to do this. Yunjiao, your occupational disease is really serious. Xiao Haiqing laughed and raised her hand to take the wine, but she was stopped by Jing Yunjiao. Xiao Haiqing was a little puzzled. Jing Yunjiao tried to sniff the wine again and even took a light sip. Then, he immediately wiped the wine off his lips and said with a serious face, Aunt Tong, I'm afraid we can't drink this wine. What is the meaning of this? Shentong was startled. He felt that Jing Yunjiao seemed to be a little angry, but the reason was inexplicable. This wine must have been brewed with unprocessed grass roots, Jing Yunjiao said. As for the flowers, they must have been added later. To put it simply, this wine is poisonous. This amount is enough to kill the 3 of us. When he said that, Shentong was stunned. She thought Jing Yunjiao was joking. However, Xiao Haiqing and Suchu didn't doubt Jing Yunjiao's words at all. They immediately pushed the wine away and glared at Shentong angrily. However, this was the first time they had met Shentong, so they didn't know why. Even Jing Yunjiao wasn't very close to her. They didn't have any grudges in the past, so why would he poison her for no reason? No. Shentong awkwardly said, Miss Jing, I think, we aren't in a movie, right? Why is there such a cliché plot? Poisoning and all that, it's so strange. She had only seen this kind of poisoning scene in ancient palace dramas. It's not just the wine. Even the fragrance in the room is problematic. Jing Yunjiao said, the spices are mixed with Chinese roses, orchids, and many other flowers. The fragrance itself isn't a problem, but it's not good if it's too strong. Chinese roses have a strong fragrance, and breathing too much will cause chest tightness. If it's serious, it'll cause suffocation and difficulty breathing. Your spices are extracted from the essence of the flowers. Chapter 844. Jing Yunjiao's explanation was clear and logical, but Shentong was completely confused by it. How could it be? This was a gift from Shun Shi. Even if Shun Shi wasn't proficient in medicine, she had some skills. How could she send something problematic? Miss Jing, I think you have misunderstood something. That's impossible. Shen Tong was confused. Aunt Tong, Yun Zhao wouldn't lie, especially when it comes to medicine and pharmacology. She's a famous TCM doctor in Ning City. If you don't believe me, you can try it on a living thing, or we can call the police and let them verify it. But if it turns out to be poisonous, it won't be good for you, Xiao Haiqing said directly. Although she didn't know why Shen Tong did this, she couldn't stand it when she poisoned her so openly. Jing Yunjiao shook her head. It's useless to call the police. Although it can be verified that it's poisonous, it's not unusual for accidents to happen because people often use aconitum chinense or aconitum chinense. Auntie Tong, we don't have any enmity between us. I don't think it was you who did it. I just hope that you can think about it carefully. What's going on with that eldest sister of yours? Does she know who the guests are? Jing Yunjiao continued. Since she was Shen Tong's sister, she should know that Shen Tong didn't drink. Then the wine was specially prepared for the three of them. As for the spices, they were commonly used by Shen Tong. Generally, they weren't fatal, but they could make people feel uncomfortable. She knows. Shen Tong couldn't figure it out. After I called you yesterday, I wanted to tell my sister not to disturb Master Shu, but she didn't answer my call. She didn't reply until this morning. I asked her about it, and she said she didn't know that Master Shu was in the capital. She said she didn't see him at the mall yesterday. Then, I mentioned you, and I said I was going to entertain you today. I asked her if she wanted to come along. After all, you were with Master Shu, so she should have asked, but she didn't agree. She said she had something to do, but to thank you for taking care of Master Shu, she sent the wine. Jing Yunjiao's eyes darkened. This matter would be left unsettled. Just now, Shunshi had mentioned that this wine was found by Shunshi in the cellar. He didn't know who made the wine, so he couldn't be sure if Shunshi did it on purpose. Moreover, she had never seen that woman before, so where did the motive come from? However, she didn't know why, but she felt that things weren't that simple. Take this spice for example. Although it wasn't targeted at her, it was still a little strange. Shu Laro was very stubborn and crazy when it came to pharmacology. He hated it when people insulted medicinal herbs and pretended to know when they didn't. As Shu Laro's daughter-in-law, even if Shu Laro wasn't around, Shunshi would never mess around with medicinal herbs if she wasn't proficient in it. However, she did it and even gave the results to others. It was very contradictory to the situation of the Shu family. Auntie Tong, I wonder if you can use the most pertinent way to describe this elder sister of yours to me? Jing Yunjiao asked. Shen Tong still looked a little nervous. Although she didn't believe that there was poison in the wine, Jing Yunjiao didn't look like he was joking. Moreover, whether there was poison in the wine or not, she would know when she brought the wine to the hospital. Elder sister, she, is a gentle woman. She's been the same for decades. She's kind and generous. Elder sister and I have the same father but different mothers. She's 4 years older than me. We didn't have a good education and our family background was average. I was lucky and became famous when I was young. I earned some money to support the family. Elder sister has always been proud of me and thought that I worked very hard. Later, I went abroad for personal reasons. When I was at my lowest, I relied on elder sister's support. Chapter 845. Shen Tong's voice was sincere, and she quickly added, You know Elder Shu, so you should know the identity of the person my elder sister married. She has been very careful all these years. If this thing is poisonous, then she definitely didn't do it on purpose. Miss Jing, I still hope you can take it as an accident. I will definitely ask her later. She and I are not that kind of vicious people. Moreover, we have no enmity with you 3 children. Why would we be so heavy-handed? Although Jing Yunjiao knew Elder Shu, she didn't know much about Elder Shu's family. Yesterday, you said that Aunt She panicked when she saw me and Elder Shu, right? Jing Yunjiao thought carefully and asked. The only connection she had with the Shu family was Shu Xianlan. Whether it was Elder Shu or Shu Xingyuan, they both told her that her face was very similar to Shu Shenlan's. If it wasn't for the fact that all aspects didn't match, they would even suspect that she was Xu Xianlan's daughter. Indeed, but she said that it was only because she was dizzy and uncomfortable. My elder sister has no reason to be like that. Shentong was also puzzled. Even though her elder sister had explained it to her, her suspicions had always been there. Did Shenxi and her sister-in-law, Xu Xianlan, have a good relationship in the past? After a few seconds, Jing Yunjiao asked again. Shentong was stunned. Why did you mention Xu Xianlan? Aunt Tong, if your elder sister really panicked because of me, then the reason must be because of Xu Xianlan. I am sure that I have never seen Shenxi before, but Xu Xianlan is related to her. Moreover, I look 60 to 70% similar to Xu Xianlan. If you look at me from a distance and don't pay attention to my temperament, I'm afraid the degree of similarity is greater. Jing Yunjiao didn't hide it and spoke the truth. When Shentong heard this, she was even more surprised. Was it really because of this? Xu Xianlan. Back then, she was a very famous talented woman. My elder sister told me that if Xu Xianlan had chosen the path of acting, even I wouldn't have been able to make a living. I heard that she had been well versed in ancient scriptures since she was a child and knew how to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was completely different from women of our background. As for her personality, I only heard that she was very amiable. In fact, I was already abroad when she had that accident. I only heard from my elder sister that they had a very good relationship and were as close as sisters. Shentong seemed to be lost in her memories. Jing Yunjiao became more and more confused. The more he explained, the more she seemed like a perfect person. Mr. Xu had only moved to the county town a few years ago. He used to live with his children, grandchildren, and daughter-in-law. According to his temper, if Shenxi had done something bad, she would have been kicked out of the house long ago. But the more innocent Shenxi was, the more abnormal she felt. She was a member of the Xu family, and her husband was not a simple man. She had been trying to leave a good impression on people for decades, but why would she suddenly give out 2 problematic items one day? Jing Yunjiao frowned and sorted out her thoughts. Suppose something happened to her, Hai Qing, and the other 2 because they drank the medicinal wine. What would happen then? Although she was the one who gave the medicinal wine, the Xu family was a family of pharmacists. It was understandable for accidents to happen occasionally. But Shentong, who had personally brought the wine to them, would definitely be ruined. Word would definitely spread. She used to be a celebrity, so things would get out of hand in the end. She would lose her reputation, and the business of the place where she died would definitely get worse. In short, her life would definitely not be good. And if she died, Mr. Xu, who had already suffered the pain of losing his daughter, would definitely be greatly affected this time. Because the wine came from the Xu family, Mr. Xu's relationship with his children would definitely worsen. But although she could think of so many possibilities, she still had a feeling that she had not found the key point. If she died, what would Shenxi gain? After all, Mr. Xu and his children and grandchildren of the Xu family were already in a bad situation. There was no need to do more than that. And if it was just targeting Shentong, it could have been anyone. There were so many guests here. Any one of them would have been fine. Why did it have to be her? Jing Yunjiao only felt that her head was burning. She had a terrible headache. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.